I find people who are faithful, they're serious about their beliefs, their religious beliefs, they're practicing Muslims, and they are finding within the Muslim teaching and the Muslim tradition resources for dialogue and toleration and peace. And I think that's incredibly profound. And I think that's the biggest contribution of the Hizmet movement and Mr. Gulen and his influences in the world. The Hizmet movement represents Islam by offering is making some very significant contributions. Believes that interfaith dialogue has a very, My name is John Barton. I'm on the Faculty of Religion at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. My areas of special interest are Christian studies and philosophy, and especially intercultural and interfaith studies. I also help direct the University Center for Faith and Learning, which explores the relationship between academic development and faith development. 2008, I was living in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan. I was vice president of a Christian college there. And in that position, I was approached by the Niagara Foundation, which is a Hizmet-affiliated foundation in Michigan. And they invited me to participate in one of the dialogue trips to Turkey. And so in 2008, I traveled to Turkey. I was part of a group of academic leaders, and we traveled around, saw the country, learned a lot. And that really was the beginning of my relationship with the Hizmet movement, learning the people, learning the structures of the Hizmet movement. The college where I worked, we actually signed an agreement, a partnership with the Niagara Foundation, and we started hosting events like Abrahamic dinners. I started taking my students to iftar dinner celebrations. We started hosting seminars and different things, and that 2008 trip really started a relationship with members of the Niagara Foundation and the Hizmet movement that has continued to today. I will say that in 2008, when I first went on the trip, I really didn't know anything. I had heard Fethullah Gulen's name. I was familiar with him in general, but I knew very, very little. And so when I went on the trip, I started thinking, I wanted to do some research, find out about this movement, who was I traveling with, who was organizing. And so I started to read some, and as everyone knows, you do your research, you look online, and I found all kinds of different reports about the Hizmet movement and about Fethullah Gulen himself. Accused him of many things, some defended him. To be honest, it was somewhat confusing to me. I didn't know exactly what to think. I was aware of some of the accusations of Mr. Gulen, some of the charges brought against him in Turkey. I was also aware of his acquittal, I think in 2006. I was aware of the book, The Imam's Army by Ahmet Sheikh. And so I had all these conflicting stories and reports. So I decided that I needed to do some of my own research. And so I started by reading some of Fethullah Gulen's books and some of his writings. I read Love and Tolerance, his book Love and Tolerance. I read a number of essays that he had written. I read a number of interviews that had been conducted of him. And then I read other materials. I was helped by some journalists like Stephen Kinzer and Mustafa Akyol. I was especially helped by the American former CIA official Graham Fuller, a Mideast expert, and then the Turkish scholar Hakan Yavush. And those helped me gain a broader and better, maybe more balanced understanding of the Hizmet movement and Mr. Gulen. And I started to grow in my appreciation for what this movement is, what they're doing, the kinds of activities they organize. But I will tell you, the thing that really made the biggest difference for me, beyond the debates, beyond the interviews, beyond the books, beyond the scholarly opinions, the thing that really made the biggest difference for me were some friendships. And I was forming at that time in Michigan some very, very close friendships with some members of the Hizmet movement. People, I mean, just names that may be just names to you, but to me, they're close friends. People like Salih Özdemir and Hakan Yildiz and Yasser Bilgin and people like that. And I got to know these men. I met their wives. I saw their children. They had me into their homes. I had them into my home, and they met my wife and my children. And I saw in them true, authentic people that were living faithfully and caring about their families and trying to make the world a better place. And it was really through those friendships, more than all the research and debates and books that I read, that I really came to appreciate what the Hizmet movement is, what it stands for, what it tries to do. And I really appreciate that. Of course, I've never met Mr. Gulen. I'm only aware of him through members of the Hizmet movement and through his writings. As I was saying earlier, just a few years ago, I knew nothing about him. I really knew nothing. I heard stories. I heard things. I decided I needed to do my own research. I started reading some of his writings. I started learning more what he stands for, who he is. I read some biographical information about his life in Turkey, the influence that he had in Turkey, what caused him to move to the United States. And I just started learning more, and I still don't know everything, but I certainly have a broader, a wider understanding of who he is and what he stands for. And you know, I have to say, I'm extremely supportive. Not just supportive, I'm inspired by what he stands for and what he's trying to do. The controversy that he has endured, the influence that he has had on many people, to try to promote peace, to build bridges of understanding across different communities. It's been very inspiring to me, and so I've become more and more interested and actually more and more engaged in different activities and initiatives with Hizmet affiliates. I think the Hizmet movement makes contributions to the common good. I think what's the most significant contribution of the Hizmet movement? It's a difficult question. I think the way I would answer, though, is this. I really believe that religion is playing and will continue to play a major, major role in the geopolitical environment. And religion is not going away, even though some people predicted it would not too many decades ago. Religion is growing. It's growing in significance and influence. And religion and religions can be they can contribute to world peace and reconciliation, but they can also contribute to world violence and chaos. And so there are some people, and I'm coming back around to the question of what is the Hizmet movement's contribution. There are some people that think that religion is the problem. And so religion must either be eliminated or it must be controlled, you know, kept down and tightly controlled. I don't think that's the answer. First of all, it's not practical. You cannot eliminate religion. It is not going to be eliminated. Religion and religious communities are continuing to grow and have influence. Secondly, number two, the more you try to tighten control of religion and religious communities and religious people, the more their influence actually seeps out through the corners and the sides. And so the answer is not to try to eliminate, reduce, or control religion. So what is the answer in the world? I think, in my opinion, I think one of the brightest hopes that our world has is when religious people themselves, people that are true advocates, practitioners of certain religions, when they find resources from within their own religious traditions, when they find resources to promote peace, to promote dialogue, to build bridges of understanding and reconciliation, when they can find resources from within their own traditions to do that, and all people from different religions are doing that, that's when I think religion will become a contributor to world peace. And that's what I see Fethullah Gulen doing. That's what I see the Hizmet movement doing. I find people who are faithful, they're serious about their beliefs, their religious beliefs, they're practicing Muslims, and they are finding within the Muslim teaching and the Muslim tradition resources for dialogue and toleration and peace. And I think that's incredibly profound. And I think that's the biggest contribution of the Hizmet movement and Mr. Gulen and his influences in the world. And I have to say, from a Christian perspective, I'm a practicing Christian. I'm very serious about my faith as well. I'm a lifelong practicing Christian. I raised my children to be Christian. But I follow Mr. Gulen. I join him. I respect and I admire what he's doing. And I am trying to build the same bridges from my community toward him and his communities and toward other communities. And so I join the Hizmet movement in that way.
One of the things that really impressed me about Hizmet is that, to me, it seems to be the one opportunity that I've seen in the present state of Islam to bring the religion and the culture back to where it was 700 years ago, 600 years ago, where Islam was at the peak of education. It was at the peak of civilization.
I think for peace to really happen in our world, we don't just need the experts or the clerics or the professors to be talking to each other. We need common people to be talking to each other. And one of the really amazing things that I see at work in the Hizmet movement is that it's doing just that.